My name is Debbie Vagins, and I'm the Policy Counsel for Civil Rights with the ACLU's Washington Legislative Office. Well, we're here because there has been a crack cocaine law, an unjust crack cocaine law that's been in effect for 20 years. In 1986, they passed a law that said for 5 grams of crack cocaine, you would have to go to jail for a mandatory minimum of 5 years, but it took 100 times that amount, 500 grams of powder cocaine, to go to jail for the same sentence. And in the last 20 years, we've seen that a lot of the rationales for that disparity have been proved to be false. And unfortunately, what we've seen in communities is a terrible racial and gender impact of the law. We were in Birmingham, Alabama a few weeks ago, and we hope to also go to Baltimore in a few weeks. Not all of our cities are set, but we're trying to talk to as many people as possible, to engage in dialogue around the country. Our goal is to get people talking, to have them contact their senators and representatives so that we can do something about the federal law. Unfortunately, the laws have had a devastating effect. If you look at some of the statistics, about 80% of crack cocaine defendants are African American, but over 66% of users are white and Hispanic, and so we're seeing that because of targeted sweeps and prosecutions, there has been a disproportionate impact on the communities. But what the long-term effect has been is once you're tainted, besides the hyper-incarceration of African Americans in prison, the disruption of families, we're seeing that once you're tainted with the felony, there's a lot of other things that you're losing. The impact and the deterioration of communities goes on and on. There's massive disenfranchisement. There's a lack of public benefits if needed. If you have a felony conviction, children are separated from parents. And so it's not just about 5 grams of crack cocaine. It's about a lifetime of felony conviction following people, and it's just disproportionately applied. If people would like to learn more about the current disparity between sentencing with crack and powder cocaine, they can go to the ACLU website, which is www.aclu.org, and we have put out a report called Cracks in the System, which talks about the 20 years of this unjust federal law, and they can download the website or contact our office for a copy.
I am Barry Hargrove with the American Civil Liberties Union Washington Legislative Office. My job is really to make sure that we get new legislation on the books to change this unfair and unequal ratio to something with more parity. And so what we're doing, and especially with these town hall meetings across the country, is we are alerting voters, we're alerting concerned citizens about the fact that there are 3 bills which are currently have been introduced into the Senate. There's one that we're supporting that Senator Biden out of Delaware has sponsored, which actually does bring sentencing back to 1-to-1. Our main objective is to make sure that bill or a bill like that gets passed through the House and through the Senate. And we're encouraging all voters to make sure they contact their legislators to make sure they support such a bill. Well, you know, it's really interesting. About 20 years ago, there was a great basketball player at the University of Maryland named Len Bias. Len Bias died of a drug overdose, but in the first few hours and maybe a couple of days after his death, it was assumed to be crack overdose, and you know the legislators on the Hill just kind of went on a frenzy, and they wanted to pass some legislation to kind of address this. Legislation was passed, but only to find out that Len died of powder cocaine overdose. And the thinking has evolved to become, or I don't know if you want to say evolved or has kind of dissolved, and has really, the law assumes now that crack is much worse than powder cocaine, that people who are using crack, you know, certainly deserve harsher penalties than those using powder. And it all stemmed back to when Len died in 1986.
I'm Jasmine Tyler, the Deputy Director of the Office of National Affairs for the Drug Policy Alliance. I can tell you that in 2006, 85% of those arrested and prosecuted for crack cocaine offenses federally were African American, although 2/3 of users are known to be white and Latino. There's a very big emphasis on seizures and arrest statistics for police departments to get funding and things like that. So there's an incentive for police and law enforcement officials to go after sort of the low-hanging fruit, we call it, the dealers on the corner instead of the dealers in the boardroom. I mean, we have cases of people being overcharged and prosecutors feeling like their hands are tied once police bring them cases that meet the requirements for these offenses to be prosecuted. There are a number of tactics that are used to encourage defendants to enter into plea agreements. Unfortunately, even entering into those plea agreements doesn't necessarily get you out of or rescue you from the mandatory minimum sentencing scheme. But there's a growing push now to ensure that police testimony is corroborated by other witnesses. And even Sheila Jackson Lee has a No More Tulias bill currently on the House side in Congress that specifically speaks to the Tulia scandal that happened in Texas a number of years ago, wherein the majority of the town's minority population, African American population, was incarcerated. When you see the high levels of policing under the guise of community policing in urban, code word for African American or Latino areas, we have to be concerned about that, because we know that African Americans and Latinos do not engage in criminal activity any more frequently than white Americans do. Our website is www.drugpolicy.org, and I think that it's very important for the members of Congress to understand that their constituents will not stand for these continued racist policies. Changing the crack cocaine sentencing scheme will really greatly impact the racial disproportionality that is being experienced in America and in our prison systems.